The sheets were cold beside me when I reached over. Dean was gone. It wasn't that unusual. He sometimes got up to check his phone or pour a glass of water. But that night, something about the silence pressed differently against my ears. Still groggy, I sat up and squinted toward the hallway where a thin slice of moonlight cut across the wooden floor. That's when I heard it, his voice, low, careful whisper. Just a little longer, she doesn't suspect anything yet. My breath caught. I froze ears, straining heart, suddenly pounding so loudly I was afraid he might hear it from the other room. His voice was calm, even soothing, like he was reassuring someone. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then footsteps, slow heading back toward the bedrooms. I slid under the covers just in time, turning away from the door, willing my body to stillness. The mattress dipped as he lay down beside me, his weight shifting the bed. He exhaled slow and measured as though nothing at all had happened. I turned toward him lazily, mimicking the sound of someone waking. "Where were you?" My voice came out soft, sleep-roughened. "Bathroom," he murmured. "Just a quick call." His lies were smooth, practiced, no hesitation. I said nothing more, but inside me something shifted. A crack, small but impossible to ignore. The next morning, I waited until Dean was in the shower before I grabbed my phone and walked into the kitchen. I didn't normally check our bank accounts. Dean managed most of the finances, and we had always trusted each other to handle our respective side. Or at least I had trusted him. Now I tapped into our shared account, with hands that trembled slightly. What I saw made my stomach twist. Withdrawals, dozens of them. Not huge, $500 here, $800 there, but frequent. More than $10,000 in 3 months. They weren't tied to anything I recognized. Not mortgage, not utilities, not our usual bills. I scrolled slower. He wasn't investing. He was siphoning. A soft sound behind me, water shutting off. I quickly locked the screen and slid the phone onto the counter like it had burned me. Dean walked in, towel slung over his shoulder, casual as ever. "What's for breakfast?" I turned, forcing a smile. "I was just about to ask you." He poured coffee like nothing was wrong, like the ground beneath us wasn't shifting. I watched the way his jaw flexed when I said, "I checked our accounts this morning." He didn't flinch, not exactly. But I saw the tension just for a second in the way his grip tightened around the mug. "Just some small investments," he said quickly. "Side projects. Nothing to worry about." I nodded slowly as if I believed him, but I didn't. That night I lay awake again. My mind refused to settle. Every detail of the last few months came crashing back. Late-night secretive phone calls, his sudden interest in reorganizing our finances. And most of all, the way he looked at me like I was a problem to solve instead of a person to love. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours before I rolled over. He was asleep or pretending to be. I couldn't tell anymore. 2 days later it happened. He left his phone on the table, face down like always. But then a notification buzzed. Just one glimpse, one name. Ilya Morrow. The preview read, "Just make sure she stays in the dark." Almost there. I didn't need to see more. My hands went cold. My throat tightened. She, me, almost there. I set the phone back where it was and walked to the sink, pretending to fill a glass. I stared into the faucet as if it could answer the one question that now consumed me. Who the hell is Ilya Morrow? By the next morning, Dean's mask slipped just a little more. He handed me a folder over breakfast. "Can you sign this? Just some tax paperwork, consolidating things, financial prep. You know, just in case something happens." His tone was easy, light, but I'd seen that look before in courtrooms. In boardrooms, he wasn't asking. He was managing, calculating. I opened the folder. It wasn't tax paperwork. It was a transfer agreement. My name, my savings, our condo, all scheduled to shift into his name. I didn't react. Just closed the folder and set it aside with care. "What is this?" I asked softly. Dean didn't even blink. "Just simplifying things." I smiled. Then I stood. "I need to think about it." His face twitched barely, but it was enough. He wasn't expecting resistance. That night he came home early, made dinner, poured wine. He thought the show would convince me to forget. He thought I'd slide into the role he cast me in. Quiet, agreeable blind. But I was done playing the part. He sat across from me, smiling that same hollow smile. Then he spoke. I think we should separate. There it was, the move. He said it like a man offering a truce. But I had already seen the war plan. I put down my fork, met his eyes, then said the words that flipped the entire table. I already moved my asset. Silence, sharp, complete. Dean's expression didn't break, but the coldness in his eyes deepened. He realized too late that the game had already changed. He wasn't in control anymore, and I wasn't the one who had something to lose. The knock came just after 9. I was nursing the tail end of a lukewarm cup of coffee, the kind that had gone bitter, sitting too long. The Chicago skyline loomed behind the windows, a blue-gray smear of winter light. I opened the door without thinking twice and froze. Mrs. Keller. The man was tall, maybe mid-40s, in a navy blazer with a clipboard tucked under one arm and a large envelope in hand. He didn't wait for a response. "You've been served?" The envelope landed in my hands with an unexpected weight. I watched him retreat down the hall without a word. My hands trembled as I closed the door and turned the lock. I already knew what was inside, but seeing it in print, official language stamped across stark white paper, felt like stepping into a different dimension. Petition for dissolution of marriage. And then in bold text just beneath, claimant requests equitable division of property and spousal support. I laughed, actually laughed. The sound was too sharp, too bitter, bouncing off the quiet walls of my apartment. Dean wasn't just divorcing me. He wanted half of everything and more. By noon, I was sitting across from Patricia Levins, one of the most respected divorce attorneys in Cook County. She wore red-rimmed glasses and had the kind of poise that made even silence feel authoritative. "He filed for spousal support," she repeated, flipping through the documents. "Yes, and he's telling people I stole from our accounts. Some of the women at work wouldn't meet my eyes today. One even called in sick for our joint project." Patricia gave a dry, unimpressed hum. "Slander. If he's spreading that, we document it. Print every post, save every text. That's why I brought her," I said, nodding toward the young woman beside me. "This is Beatrice, forensic accounting intern and part-time digital bloodhound." Beatrice gave a small wave, then leaned forward and opened her laptop. "I started pulling bank record timestamps from Dean's complaint," she said. "There are 12 transactions he claims Sarah made, but the first 6, they predate the account itself." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "You're certain?" "Absolutely. Cross-check them against the account creation confirmations and email server logs. Whoever forged this didn't bother to cover their technical tracks." I exhaled, slow and deliberate. "So what does that give us?" Patricia looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "It gives us an opening fraud falsification of legal evidence. And if he's been spreading this narrative publicly, defamation, I want to go after him," I said. "Not just defend myself. I want the court to see what he really is." She smiled. Then, not kindly, but like a chess master ready to play. Over the next 3 days, my apartment transformed from sanctuary to strategy room. Beatrice lived in spreadsheets and metadata, while Patricia coordinated filings, depositions, and preliminary motions. Every beep from my phone made my pulse jump. Dean hadn't let up. At work, the tension was palpable. The head of HR pulled me into an unscheduled meeting. "There's been concern," she said gently. "Rumors about your conduct. We're not taking sides, of course, but..." Of course. I walked out of the building, feeling like a shadow of myself. That night, I found myself sitting on my kitchen floor, back pressed to the fridge, staring at the ceiling. I should have cried. But there were no tears left, just the cold, grinding awareness that I was being erased. Not just from a marriage, but from the narrative Dean was writing for everyone else to believe. He was charming, respected, a well-spoken attorney who knew exactly which words to weaponize, and he had a head start, but I had receipts. Beatrice hit gold on a Thursday evening. We were 3 cups of coffee deep, our screens glowing through the dim light of my living room. "I think this is the keystone," she said, turning her laptop to face me. There it was. An internal transfer document showing funds moving from one of our joint accounts into a shell company. One that didn't exist until 2 months after the alleged transaction. The metadata on the PDF showed it had been edited in Photoshop. She leaned in. "The timestamps don't lie. He forged this sloppily, and that's what the court needs to see." I stared at the screen, heat rising in my chest. "He thought I wouldn't look this closely," I murmured. "No," Patricia said from the doorway. She'd just arrived a stack of files under one arm. "He thought you'd be too emotional to notice? Too afraid?" I stood up, my fingers brushing the edge of the table. "I'm done defending." I walked across the room, took the full file from Beatrice, and dropped it onto Patricia's desk. "It's time to strike back." And just like that, the tone shifted. Not from desperation, but strategy. Not reaction, but precision. Let him whisper in the dark. We were about to turn on the lights. It started with silence. Not the comforting kind, but the kind that wrapped around you like a cold coat. Sarah stepped into the office early Monday morning, her heels echoing down the polished hallway. As she passed the reception area, small talk hushed, emails seemed to vanish mid-send. Conversations evaporated into awkward glances. She felt it before she saw it. The weight of suspicion hanging in the air, a junior associate avoided eye contact. The paralegal who used to bring her coffee now kept her distance. But the real punch came when she logged into the internal firm portal. A thread titled "Unethical Behavior Discussion" had over 200 views, posted anonymously. It linked her name to vague allegations of financial misconduct, suggesting she had embezzled funds from a shared account, no details. Just enough to let imaginations run wild, and it had worked. Sarah stared at the screen, her hand frozen on the mouse. The betrayal didn't feel like a knife. It felt like erosion. Silent, steady, the way trust disappears, grain by grain, until all that remains is suspicion. She shut the screen. Patricia met her in the corner office 20 minutes later. "They're getting desperate," the lawyer said, "not even bothering with a greeting. Dean's pulling every trick to turn your professional world against you. But we're not going to let it." Beatrice arrived with a stack of documents, red tabs fluttering like battle flags. "He submitted these to the court this morning, claimed you fabricated transactions to hide money." Sarah took the folder and flipped through it slowly. Each line was surgical, precise, too perfect. It would almost be convincing if not for Beatrice's quiet voice. "Look at the timestamps," she said. "These transactions supposedly occurred 3 months ago, right? But the accounts weren't even opened until last month. We have the bank letters to prove it." Sarah closed the folder, her hand steady. She looked out the window, the city spread beneath her like a battlefield. Dean had thrown the first stone she had ducked, but now it was her turn to throw it back with facts, not fire. That night, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, the dim light casting long shadows on the hardwood floor. In front of her was a thick manila envelope with her name in bold across the front. She had reviewed it 5 times already. Still, she opened it again, flipping through affidavits, timestamps, signed statements, and screenshots. Patricia and Beatrice had built a fortress document by document. Every accusation Dean made had a counterpoint. Every lie he told had a truth waiting in ambush. Her phone buzzed, a text from Patricia. "Ready to file? All we need is your go." Sarah didn't hesitate. "Do it." She sent the reply, then leaned back in her chair. Above the kitchen sink hung an old frame. It held a photo from 5 years ago, her and Dean at a charity gala. Smiling champagne flutes raised. She had loved that photo once. Not anymore, not now. That she knew what his smile really meant. A mask, a trap, a performance. Sarah stood, pulled the photo from the wall, and carefully slid the backing off. Behind the print tucked in the frame was a folded note she had forgotten about. Her mother's handwriting. "You are not fragile. "You are forged." She smiled. Not the kind Dean would recognize, not soft or sweet or eager to please. The smile was made of tempered steel. The next morning, Sarah walked into Patricia's office in a black suit. No makeup hair pulled back. She didn't need armor. She was the weapon now. Patricia handed her a final draft of the countersuit. Defamation, falsification of legal evidence. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Sarah took the pen and signed. "He wanted a show," she said, placing the pen down. "Let's give him a courtroom instead." The courthouse buzzed with the subdued tension of high-stakes drama. Reporters milled near the steps, murmuring names and legal speculations. Inside the hallway, echoed with the low shuffle of leather shoes and the occasional bark of a bailiff's command, Keller stepped into the courtroom with her shoulders back and her face unreadable. A picture of collected grace in a tailored navy suit. Patricia, her lead attorney, walked beside her, carrying the thick binder that had taken weeks of sleepless nights to compile. Across the aisle, Dean Keller adjusted the cuffs of his crisp gray suit and flashed a controlled smile at the cameras before sliding into his seat with the air of a man expecting to win. But the moment his eyes landed on the binder in Patricia's hands, 3 inches thick tabs sticking out in every direction, his expression faltered, just slightly. Just enough. Sarah caught it. The judge entered. Moments later, "Court is now in session," the clerk intoned. The room settled into a reverent hush. Dean's lawyer was first to rise. "Your Honor, we are requesting a full forensic audit of Mrs. Keller's financial holdings. We believe she has intentionally diverted marital assets to evade equitable distribution in this divorce proceeding." There it was, the move Dean had been building toward for months. He wasn't just leaving. He wanted to take her down with him. Patricia stood slowly. "Your Honor, we object. These claims are based on fabricated documents, and my client's financial transfers were executed before any legal proceedings began. Furthermore, those assets were lawfully protected through a revocable living trust created under her name, independently managed and entirely traceable." She slid the binder forward across the polished oak table. "And we're prepared to prove it." The judge flipped open the first page. Dean shifted in his chair. What followed was a methodical dismantling. Beatrice took the stand, calm and clinical. She pointed to the metadata inconsistencies in the PDF files Dean had submitted. She outlined 3 different transaction logs with overlapping timestamps for accounts that, according to official records, hadn't even existed at the time. "This file, for example," Beatrice said, holding up one document with a gloved hand, "shows a transaction on May 14th, 10:03 a.m., but the account it references wasn't opened until June the 2nd. Dean's lawyer stammered, "There must be a mistake." "There is," Beatrice interrupted, "and it's not ours." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Even the stenographer paused, fingers hovering over the keys. The judge turned to Dean's table. "Mr. Keller, do you or your counsel have a response to these discrepancies?" Dean's jaw clenched. His attorney whispered furiously, flipping through a thinner, more disorganized folder. Dean leaned forward, palms flat against the desk. "Your Honor, this was never about deception. We merely—" The judge raised a hand. "That's enough." A moment of silence passed, long enough for Sarah to count her heartbeat. "This court finds no credible evidence to support the motion for a forensic audit. Furthermore," the judge added, looking directly at Dean, Now the evidence submitted contains multiple irregularities that indicate possible tampering. The motion is denied with prejudice. Mr. Keller will be responsible for all legal fees associated with this claim." The gavel came down hard. Dean flinched. Sarah exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, but her knuckles had turned white from holding them so tightly. She didn't look at Dean. Not yet. She didn't need to. It was done. Outside the courtroom, the midday sun spilled through the tall windows, illuminating the hallway with soft golden warmth. Sarah stepped out first, the door swinging shut behind her with a quiet click. Reporters turned, voices rising in unison, but Patricia blocked them with a curt, No comment. Dean came out seconds later. He didn't look toward the cameras or the crowd. He walked past Sarah in a straight line. Just as he passed her, he muttered low enough for only her to hear. "This isn't over." Sarah tilted her head toward him slightly, her expression unreadable. She said nothing. As he disappeared down the hallway, flanked by his attorney, Sarah stepped into the sunlight, her pace unhurried, her eyes lifted toward the sky, clear, endless, and calm. She had won on paper in front of a judge under oath. But she knew Dean, and he wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat with dignity. He would regroup, recalculate, try something new. Still, for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a small smile. The legal system had seen through the lies. Her silence had worked not as submission, but as strategy. Outside on the courthouse steps, Patricia leaned in and whispered, "It's not just a win. It's a turning point. You've changed the story." Sarah nodded slowly. No more letting Dean write her chapters. From this point forward, she held the pen. A week had passed since the courtroom collapsed beneath Dean's performance, exposing every lie he tried to cement in law. Sarah hadn't celebrated, not loudly, not with champagne or dinner parties. Her victories weren't fireworks. They were mornings like this. Warm coffee, quiet sun, her own home. She sipped slowly from her favorite mug, the one with a faded constellation print, and looked out the small window above her sink. The house was modest. The kitchen tiles had scratches. The windows sometimes whined in the wind, but it was hers, fully undisputed. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it. A text. Dean. "Hey, can we crash with you for a while? Just until things settle down." Her thumb hovered over the screen. No punctuation, no apology, just an assumption. As if the past few months hadn't happened, as if he still believed he had a door to walk back through. She didn't reply, not yet. Instead, she stepped out onto the porch. The wood creaked under her bare feet, but the spring air was kind. Across the street, kids were drawing on the sidewalk with chalk. One had scrawled, "You matter," in big, uneven letters. Sarah sat down with her coffee and watched her phone buzzed again. "Mom, family always finds a way back. Don't be stubborn." Sarah blinked at the message. She remembered when she first told her mom about Dean's betrayal. The conversation had lasted 3 minutes. Her mother had said, "Well, marriage is hard. Maybe you should try harder." But Sarah had tried. She had folded herself into something quieter, smaller, easier, and now for the first time she didn't need to. Inside, she grabbed a pen and a small strip of paper. On it, she wrote, "There's no space for lies here anymore. I wish you peace." She taped it to the inside of her front door, and she meant it. That evening, Sarah hosted a small community cleanup. Just a folding table lemonade and homemade brownies. Neighbors came. They brought gloves and trash bags and stories. No one asked her about court. No one whispered about Dean. They talked about garden mulch and the best local coffee, and laughed about potholes that never got fixed. For once, Sarah felt seen without needing to explain herself. As the sun began to fall behind the rooftops, she stood by the porch steps and watched 2 girls chalk a crooked sun on her sidewalk. One added, "Welcome home." She looked down at her phone one last time. Still no apology from Dean. She didn't need one. She didn't reply. Didn't block him. She just put the phone away and stepped inside. There was no victory speech. No dramatic lock click. Just a quiet understanding that this door, this life belonged to her now. And the people who wanted to walk through it, they would have to bring more than old excuses. They would have to come with truth. And if they couldn't, well, they could stay outside. In the end, the door I built isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about boundaries, resilience, and reclaiming power without making a sound. Sarah didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to humiliate anyone publicly. She simply chose to protect herself, document everything, and let the truth do the heavy lifting. What struck me the most was how she responded to cruelty, not with chaos, but with clarity. She didn't just survive, she built something better in the aftermath, a life that was finally hers. That's the quiet strength we often overlook. And let's be honest, many of us have been Sarah at some point. Trusted too long, stayed silent too often. But this story is a powerful reminder. Being kind doesn't mean being naive, and walking away doesn't mean you've lost. Sometimes it's the ultimate victory. Here's the lesson I take from this. Preparation is power. Silence is not weakness, and your peace is not up for negotiations. So, if you're watching this, and you've ever been pushed aside, betrayed, or underestimated, remember you can build your own door, you can say no more and mean it. And you don't need permission to start over on your terms. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Let us know what part of Sarah's journey hit home. And if you'd like more real-life inspired stories about justice, strength, and quiet revenge, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There's more truth and more healing to come. Until next time, protect your peace, trust your gut, and never apologize for drawing the line.